Hey, there, it's me, Eden. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to my channel and visit my Patreon page for early access. Link in the comment, thanks. My mind panicked. There was no way I wanted to get involved with Sylvia and the shop again. But at least this one's free. There's higher charges to pay on the other one, Nikki pointed out. I decided for a moment that I liked Nikki. Yes, but Sylvia said she'd take them in kind, as long as Steve worked for her for a few weekends. It wouldn't cost us any cash. Anita pointed out unhelpfully. A vision of me being, or rather Sarah being, Sylvia's shop assistant for 3 Saturdays flashed through my mind, having to wear some stupid outfit like Sue had been wearing, a black pencil skirt, and crisp white blouse, and worst of all, the antics Sylvia might try and get up to with me in the changing rooms. There was no doubt about it, I would have to make it, so I wore this dress. We need to think which dress is more likely to make him win, Anita was saying. Well, I like this one better, I blurted out. They all turned to look at me in surprise. I had not really given my opinion on any of the clothes I'd had to wear so far. Why? Asked Anita. I was stumped for anything to say. I don't know, I began. It just feels better. You mean it's more comfortable? Anita asked, obviously puzzled by my sudden enthusiasm. Yes, I responded, and with a flash of insight added, and more feminine. She looked even more shocked by this. But the other one was quite feminine as well, she pointed out. Yes, I gasped, hurriedly, but not so feminine as this one. A confused look came over Anita's face. I'm inclined to agree with him, Nikki said. He looks a bit more elegant in this one. It's sophisticated, where the other one was a bit, I don't know, flirty. Well, maybe he needs to be a bit flirty to win, Anita went on. It's all very well going with what makes him feel more feminine, but what we're all about is making sure he wins the contest. I couldn't believe what was happening. Here I was, extolling the virtues of a dress I had been made to wear, simply because I didn't want to return to Sylvia's boutique. That's true, Nikki said, considering Anita's point. He does look a bit untouchable, doesn't he? Yes, agreed Anita. More of a goddess than a girl. Nikki smiled. Yes, I know what you mean. Do you think it would put the judges off? It might do, Anita mused. I silently cursed. Nikki was being won around by Anita's preference for the shop dress. I looked at Tanya for support. What do you think, Tanya? I asked, swaying the dress from side to side with my hips, in what I hoped was a winning manner. Well, it's no good asking me, she responded. I didn't see the other one. All I know is that you look pretty good in that. But you'd probably look pretty good in anything, so I can't really say. A silence fell on the 4 of us. I looked from one to the other, trying to think of a way to rubbish the shop dress. Do you think Sylvia would let him try it on again if we went back up there? Suggested Anita. No. I shouted, before thinking. No, she wouldn't, I said more calmly. She told me so. Anita looked bewildered. Are you sure? I thought she said we could think about it and go back. No, I responded. She didn't. Anita raised her eyebrows in surprise. Well, that's not how I remember it. Silence ruled again for at least a minute. Please let me have this one. I begged at last. I really like it. It's lovely. Anita now looked utterly confused. Well, if he likes it that much, perhaps we ought to go with it, Nikki said, obviously thinking carefully. If it makes him feel more feminine, then that's good for a start. Oh, it does, I put in. I feel much more feminine in this. Anita looked at me curiously. Well, that might just be the stockings and suspenders. You could have those with the other dress as well. Well, for my money, if he wants that dress, he should have it, put in Nikki. I nodded enthusiastically in response and looked pleadingly at Anita. Her brows knotted, and she thought for a while. Well, I'm still not convinced, she said, but like you say, if he really wants to wear that, then I suppose he should. Oh, thanks. I responded, breathing a sigh of relief that I had been spared from Sylvia's clutches. But I tell you what, Anita went on, if you lose because you don't look flirty enough, she hesitated, obviously trying to think of a suitable forfeit, make you wear stockings and suspenders to school all next year. Then you'll know about feeling feminine. She was trying to look stern, but melted when she saw the relief on my face. I tell you what, said Nikki, go and get Mum Tanya. She wanted to see him, didn't she? Yes, Tanya agreed, and went off into the hallway. Anita was still looking at me perturbed. You seem very enthusiastic about that dress, she said. Is there something you're not telling us? I blushed. This was doing my chances of impressing Anita no good at all. No, I responded. I just thought it was nicer than the one in the shop. Anita didn't look at all convinced, but said nothing more, as Nikki's mum came back into the room with Tanya. Here he is, Tanya exclaimed with glee. What do you think? Mrs. Simmons looked me up and down. He looks delightful, she declared. Yes, he looks good in that. Well done. She moved closer for a better view. You really would never tell that he was a boy, she said, looking down at my full skirt, surrounding the bottom half of my body. I hate to say it, but he looks better in that dress than you lot did. I know, Nikki responded enthusiastically. And he likes it too. Nikki's mum raised her eyebrows at me. Do you? She asked, with a note of surprise. Well, I mumbled, I think it's better than the one I tried on down the shop. This was obviously news to her. You tried on one at the shops? She asked, incredulously. I nodded nervously in response. Well, that was very brave. You must be confident to do that, she responded. She looked me up and down again. Well, I think you make a lovely girl, she smiled. And I'm sure you'll do well in the contest. We think he might win. Anita put in with enthusiasm. Yes, he very well might, Mrs. Simmons replied. Still, this won't do. I've got to get dinner ready. Thank you for letting me see him, I enjoyed it. That's fine. Nikki responded. Mrs. Simmons went back out into the hall and off to the kitchen. Well, now that's sorted, we'd best think about getting ready for the sleepover, said Anita. Oh yes, agreed Nikki. I'm afraid I won't be able to come though. I asked my mum, but we've got to go out tomorrow morning apparently. Oh, that's a shame, said Anita. So it's just you and me then, Sarah? If my mum lets me, I mumbled. Oh yes. We were going to call her, weren't we? Anita said, suddenly remembering. And you were going to fill in for my mum, Nikki. Is that still all right? Sure, said Nikki. Shall we do it now? That would save me having to go around to your place just to make a phone call. Good thinking, responded Anita. Oh, and I have to ring John as well, don't I? To make sure he doesn't come around tonight. I jumped at the mention of the dreaded John, but there was definitely something good about the thought that he was being put off for my sake, even if it was for a girly sleepover. The phone was brought over, and I found myself explaining to my mum that I had met this girl who I knew who wanted me to stay over. She was generally all right about my girlfriends, so agreed without too much difficulty. She did mention that I had no clothes with me, and asked what I would wear the next day. Bluffing, I told her I had picked up a t-shirt in town, and that I could go down and get a pair of socks and pants later. Little did she know that her son was speaking to her wearing a long bridesmaid's dress, with stockings and suspenders, and a bra. Just as I thought things were going well, she asked if she could talk to Anita's mother. I had some doubts about this subterfuge, but handed the phone over to Nikki. I have to say Nikki played her part well. She chatted away like a woman twice her age, and agreed that it was nice that Anita and I were now friends. I blushed as she said this, and she smiled and winked at me. My mum obviously asked her what time I was going to be back on the next day. "Hang on, I'll ask them," Nikki said to the phone receiver. "What time will he get back tomorrow?" she asked. I was about to say midday, when Anita chimed in with, "Say about 9 tomorrow night." Nikki repeated this to the phone, said, "Goodbye," and hung up. "Anita," I said, complaining, "that means I've got to stay dressed as a girl until tomorrow evening." "I know," she said, obviously delighted with the prospect. "Still, since you liked how feminine that dress made you feel, it won't be a problem, will it?" She smiled at me, and I scowled back at her. "Well, now that's sorted, we might as well get you ready for going back to my place. Come on, we'll help you out of that, and back into your other stuff," Anita said, breezily. Nikki and Anita helped me out of the dress, but I insisted on taking the stockings and suspender belt off myself. Nikki carefully packaged them all away back in the huge plastic bag. "You'll need some practice wearing it before Thursday," she commented. "But we can sort that out later." I gathered up my tights, flowery knickers and skirt, and put them on. I was surprised at how good I was getting at it, although the tights had stretched with me having them on all day, so were easier to fit on. Anita found my top, and helped me on with it, making sure it didn't mess up my wig too much, or misshape my boobs. Once this was done, we were ready to go. "Okay, then, Nikki. Thanks for all your help today," Anita said. "That's fine," Nikki replied, kissing her on the cheek. "You ought to say thanks too," Anita admonished me. "Oh yes. Thanks," I said, without too much enthusiasm. "You're welcome," Nikki told me, and kissed me on the cheek too. Somehow this wasn't as exciting as when Anita did it. "You'd best say goodbye to my mum as well," she went on. She called her, and Mrs. Simmons came into the hall. "Oh," she said, obviously shocked when she saw me. "What's the matter?" Nikki asked. "Well, when Tanya said he was getting changed out of the dress, I sort of assumed that he'd be dressed as a boy." Nikki grinned. "No, he's not going to be dressed as a boy for a while yet. This is all part of his practice." "Oh, I see," Mrs. Simmons said, looking at me dubiously. "Well, it was nice to meet you," she hesitated. "Sarah." "Sorry, I don't know your other name." "It doesn't matter," said Nikki. "Just think of him as Sarah." "That would be good." "Yes," the woman said. "Well, hope to see you again soon. Either as a boy or a girl." "Thank you," I responded dully. Anita and I walked up the path, with my skirt thwopping against my legs again, and heard the door shut behind us. We were alone together at last. Please subscribe for the next part. And visit my Patreon page for early access.